Proof texting ignores the meta-narrative of the Bible. Meta-narrative is a grand story. All 66 books of the Bible tell a large story. I was thinking about some movies that have been episodic or go through a lot. You've got the Twilight series, 3 books, big story. Each movie tells a story, but there's a big story to the 3 of them. The Lord of the Rings saga, The Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings set, grand story. There's a big story about Earth's struggle against Sauron, the big bad guy. But there's a bunch of individual movies that are telling that story. Each one has its own plot line. Each one has its own story. Each character has a story that circles around them, but there's a big story that covers all of it. Star Wars. Even though the first 3 movies were absolutely horrible. Not the original 3, but the 3 episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Terrible movies. But there's a grand story, and each movie tells a story in and of itself, relating back to the grand story. In the Bible, you have 66 books. You got 66 books telling stories. All 66 of those books has a grand story or a meta-narrative. We don't look at it from that standpoint when you're looking at it as an instruction manual. Every story in the Bible is a piece of a bigger picture. Failure to present or understand the grand story of a Bible in a quest of individual validation, desire to be proven right, or an attempt to uphold tradition places undue burden on the people. The burden of shame for failing to perform religious behaviors gleaned from their manual of a Bible and distorted through their own ignorance and ambition or insecurity is one such burden. I look at the Bible, I'm looking for a manual. Any scripture that you take and interpret has to fit the meta-narrative of the Bible. So when we talk about the difference between, I'm doing good. When we talk about the difference between Old Testament and New Testament, that's a false distinction because there is a revelation of God that is presented through the entire Bible. Christ is the last revelation of God that we're going to get according to Scripture. So everything about the other books has to be interpreted through the progressive revelation of getting to Christ. The Usual Suspects. You guys I know some of you have seen that movie. At the end you find out Kaiser, well, I can't say what the end is because you haven't seen it, but you find out the end and then you got to go back and look at the whole movie again because there's this piece of information that comes at the end. That's what a plot twist is supposed to be. Most of them are really obvious, but occasionally you get a good movie, The Sixth Sense.
I was there.
You find out something at the end, you got to go back and look at the whole movie all over again. You got Christ in the New Testament. So you can't take Old Testament and New Testament and pit them against each other because the entire thing is telling one big story. And so anything that you try to interpret has to be in conformity to the meta-narrative of the grand story. People don't look for grand stories, they look for sound bites, they look for preaching subjects, they look for Bible study subjects, and when you do that, you end up messing something up.